Hello, Chris. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Miriam. It's fantastic to be here.
Yes, I'm very much looking forward to speak to the founder of Pickles, especially after the session we had together and all the kind of conversations we already had about creativity and drawing and facilitation. And before we get there, I always start with the same question. When did you start calling yourself a facilitator? And actually, do you?
It's a good question. I call myself a lot of things, but facilitator is actually not one of them yet. Now, I would say that I do facilitate, but I guess other people say that of me. It's just kind of something that I started doing. And yeah, I guess it's not a identity that I so strongly, just identify with.
What does facilitation mean to you?
I think it means really you are that person in a room, in a group that ensures there's flow, that there's conversation, that one person isn't just dominating the whole thing. You're kind of putting oil between all of the social interactions, and you are having that goal in mind of where you think you should be heading, but you're also flexible with whatever is happening in the moment to make the best decisions. So it definitely takes some improv. It takes a lot of listening. It takes being aware of who has spoken, who hasn't spoken, just really kind of mixing up a group of people.
I like that. Coming back to the oil. So putting some oil in the sauce, adding some improv and listening. And I'm really curious I'm eager to have you to share the story behind Pickles with the audience, because I think that's fascinating. So what is Pickles and how did this idea emerge?
Yeah, so Pickles, these are not the salty, sweet snacks that are made out of cucumbers, as many of you might know pickles as. In this case, there's two C's, spelled Piccles, because it's a combination of pictures and pixels. And we put those together. And Pickles originated in my iPhone's note section, just like all my ideas go when they first begin. And it really started when I got my first soul-sucking corporate job that just left me feeling absolutely empty, because previously I had spent the first 13 years of my working life starting companies. I was very entrepreneurial. So I was mowing lawns. I was trying to start a solar company. I was working at other people's startups. And then a friend of mine got $1 million in seed funding, asked me to join his sales team. And I was like, oh, this is cool. My parents thought it was cool because I was going to be getting health insurance, and I had just gotten kicked off of their health insurance. And so I was like, all right, yeah, let's try this base salary thing for a little while. And while there were cool elements to that job, it was just turning summer in Boston. We had just suffered through the winter, and I found myself having to pretty much lock myself in a phone booth for 4 to 6 hours a day, looking at beige walls, leaving voicemails. And it was not what I wanted to spend my life doing. And so that's when I really got curious about creativity, because previously in my life, entrepreneurship had been scratching that itch. And every day I wouldn't know what I was really going to be doing that day when I woke up. And so by just having that creativity no longer fulfilled in my work, I started looking elsewhere. How can a 26-year-old who just has been playing sports and that's about it, be creative? I'm not an artist. I cannot sing. I cannot dance. I can't cook. Like, what am I going to put my creative effort into? And so that's when I kind of had the idea to make it more accessible for people like me who didn't know where to get started and didn't consider themselves creative or artistic. So this was when coloring books were blowing up, but I was like, all right, I don't want to carry around pens on the train while I'm commuting and like just coloring right here. So the idea originated as a collaborative coloring book where instead of one person spending an hour drawing in the Mona Lisa, you could have 100 people spend 1 minute each drawing a tiny little piece of the Mona Lisa. So you could get that kind of creative itch scratched in a much shorter time, but also create this finished piece with a bunch of strangers. And then there wasn't that pressure to be perfect, because that's one thing that doing something creative, whether it's artistic, even chefs, they probably get scared when they put a new plate of food in front of someone that they've never tried before. And it's like, oh my God, I hope this tastes good. It's nerve-wracking to put something like that out into the world. And so this was a way to just bring down that psychological barriers that we put in front of ourselves to actually using our imagination, creating something, and then releasing it to the world.
And the idea of drawing something together. So it also, I can imagine, create the sense of belonging to a group of strangers that you don't even see, right? Because Pickles is without video, it's just on your phone and you draw
Exactly.
a piece.
Yeah. And we have been using it in Zoom a lot. And actually, right when we built it, I was like, all right, well, if you build it, they will come. So I was waiting around and the crickets started chirping. I was like, all right, what am I going to do with this now? And so I started seeing where we would really start adapting it to. And that's when we actually started off with a focus on healthcare, specifically children's hospitals, as a way that kids who were isolated, couldn't leave their hospital rooms, could actually use this as a form of cathartic release, but also a way to feel connected with the other kids in the hospital and have this shared experience, this feeling of community without being able to leave their rooms. So really it's those shared experiences.
It's such a beautiful story, I think.
Yeah, thank you.
How did they react? Did it take off?
So healthcare is tough to break into. You got to run through a lot of red tape a lot of times. And we actually did, when I relocated to Montreal from Boston in 2018, we went through the Hacking Health incubator and we got some funding and actually got a pilot project at Montreal Children's Hospital in the oncology unit. And the kids, they loved it. They had a great time and they were like, "Ooh, who's drawing here?" And like they had a great time, but it was the administrators who had to introduce it to the kids who were like, all right, this is a little bit time consuming. Like, this is good for the kids, but we got to do so much on a daily basis. And they were, for every little thing that they needed to help with the app, they had to, since we were on the oncology unit, fully disinfect and scrub up and wash their hands and then like hit a little button to reset the app or something like that. So it was a little bit too resource intensive to get traction during that period. But we have since partnered with an awesome organization called the Crayon Initiative, who already has relationships with hundreds of children's hospitals around the United States. And we developed a version of the app that's much easier. So now child life specialist or a nurse can just have a QR code on their keys and then let any kid just scan that. And then the whole experience is just right on their phone or their tablet, whatever they scan it with. And it's just much, much easier.
That's wonderful. And such a great example of how you first make a plan that seems perfect and so beautiful. And then you encounter all these daily, almost mundane challenges, but still need to find a way around. And we have used Pickles in one of the Never Done Before workshops where we walked outside and everyone started drawing whatever they would see. And I thought this was a beautiful example of how drawing together and this creative effort can bring a group together and also trigger different conversations. And I'd be curious about other examples that you can share for maybe a broader audience, not only children, of how you use Pickles now and how it, or what actually emerges out of that. So what's possible through the fact of having a group drawing together?
Yeah. So I think that having this shared experience, really using drawing as a way to tap into the collective creativity and the collective intelligence of a crowd or community is just so powerful. So, I mean, we'll use it for employee all hands meetings with 1,000 people all drawing at once, and we'll use the company's brand colors. And so we get a pretty cool branded mosaic afterwards if they wanted to print it out and hang it in the office as some corporate art. But it's awesome because it's really authentic. I mean, the platform is anonymous. So when you ask people to draw, what you get is from their soul. It's what they really think, not what they want their boss or their coworkers to think of them. Because people are not very good at, well, first of all, a lot of people aren't very good at drawing, and they're definitely not good at lying through their drawings. And so when you just make them a little bit uncomfortable and have them do something in a medium that they're not used to like this, it really, first of all, knocks them off kilter a little bit. And they're like, oh my God, I suck at drawing. I don't know what I'm going to do. But then they see everybody else doing it and they realize, okay, well, I could do this too. Because you see all of the drawings just flooding the screen in real time as everybody is using their phones to draw. And so that really kind of breaks down that psychological barrier that obviously if we were all just watching Miriam and patiently waiting for her to make this beautiful drawing, she would be a little bit more nervous. And so just that kind of shared experience where not only the facilitator, whoever is introducing it, they are in a vulnerable position because if nobody draws, they're just going to be staring at a blank screen and have nothing to respond to. But everybody else is kind of matching that vulnerability and saying like, yeah, I'm going to do something that I haven't done in a very long time, since second grade art class or wherever it may be. And so I love using it with these audiences who aren't artists. They're corporate CEOs, they're accountants, they're everyone who probably stopped making art just as soon as it got cut from their curriculum in third grade or whenever it was. And I mean, we've had lots of really interesting ways of using it. I mean, I love, especially when it can blend the digital and the physical. So when it got us to walk outside, observe our surroundings, draw that, and then come back and be able to reflect on that, that was incredible, because then it unlocks stories that everyone can share about the environment that they're in, as Dove is showing us the beautiful French buildings outside of his house, and
the church. Mm-hmm.
yeah, exactly. And someone else is just drawing the bars on their window and the gray buildings. It's like, yeah, this is not the most inspiring environment. But also, we've done this on the side of buildings in Montreal. And in that case, it's almost like a public graffiti wall that lets people leave their mark on the city, and does so in an easily accessible way. And it's cool because after someone makes a drawing, they put a little bit of themselves out there, they're so much more likely to engage with the people around them, in their environment. It's just like, it kind of starts that ball rolling. It goes from, well, I'm in my bubble and I'm not going to interact with anyone, to, oh, this was an easy little way of interacting. Like, yeah. And then it just kind of opens you up a little bit. And
you
so
can share this experience, and you already have something in common with another person because you co-created something that is publicly visible.
Exactly.
Like, and I would like to come back to the anecdote you shared about the all hands and the anonymity, because I think this can be very inspiring for the audience to reflect on, for instance, company values. So what does a specific company value? For instance, let's use one of the buzzwords, transparency or collaboration or leadership. How do you reflect on this specific idea, make a drawing out of it, and then you see all the different perceptions of it and have a basis for discussion?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's so much more powerful to, instead of just hearing your CEO tell everyone what fluffy values you should be having, to really tell people, like, ask them, what does transparency, what does creativity or innovation or whatever, what does that mean to you? And then you can involve everybody in the values and the mission that way. And it can really be a way to, kind of rally the troops. Like, if you're not doing so well, ask, how might we turn around our company? How might we innovate in this specific area? There's lots of ways. And I love questions. It's just like, I think they're alive. They're unlock things in people. Like, answers, they can be good too, but questions are my jam.
Absolutely. Because they're open opportunities, right? And if I think then the tricky part or the difficult part is to ask questions in a way that you get an unexpected answer. And then there's this new space where stuff can happen. I realized that actually, I think the majority of people are really bad in asking questions. Many questions are hidden kind of advice or ideas. Have you thought of doing this?
Yeah. Do you really want to do that? Are you sure? That's not a question at all.
And I think even having a more creative form of asking, of a temperature check of a company or a team. So how do you feel as being part of this company? Or how would you visualize our company culture? And then suddenly, since it's anonymous, you can have the real reflection of, okay, how does it actually look like?
Yeah. And it takes a strong leadership team to be open to that sort of thing. Because if you have a just locked down culture that isn't vulnerable, isn't authentic, it's in your best interest to sweep things under the rug, then you might not want to be doing that. Because I mean, some of the things that you could see, it's like, wow, we needed to see this, but now we feel like we need to act on it. Like, I asked a company, what superpower have you developed over this pandemic? So everyone is drawing their superpowers, from chess to banana bread. And one person just like drew themselves with some tears coming down their eye and wrote, "I'm lonely." And I was like, damn, it just hits you different when someone draws that, because you know that it was really done by someone, like they kind of put themselves out there. And it's like, wow, this makes me want to create some sort of loneliness program for employees who might feel isolated in this remote environment that we've all been forced into, like things like that. And that was only one drawing. And it really makes all of these individual data points that might normally just be thrown in a graph and say, yeah, we have 78% employee satisfaction. It lets the individual stand out a lot more. And it's like, you can obviously see the macro trends, but then that micro data, each individual drawing can stand for so much more than just a kind of qualitative data point.
That's amazing. And what an example. It really touches me. And how did the leadership react? Or would this be something that you as a facilitator in this case would debrief on? Or is it something that the leadership has to deal with? And so how did the conversation from there go?
Yeah, so we did not really engage in that conversation. I mean, we made some pretty cool graphics for them and they were like, oh, cool. And we didn't like get like super deep into our analysis of all of the drawings, just because I don't think they were ready for that or wanted that. They were looking for like a cool way of kind of rallying their troops before a super busy quarter. And it was about to be a hectic time for the entire company, and everyone was going to be going on the road again. So they were like, yeah, let's just like make some cool stuff, inspiring stuff, and not really policy changes. But it's certainly somewhere that, bringing it back to like the digital experiences that have a real world impact, it's a direction that we're heading in, and something that I really want to do a lot more of with the tool to be able to influence, leadership, change, government, wherever it may be, really kind of letting people see how their people are feeling.
Yeah. And I also like what you just mentioned, that you help then also to use these drawings to analyze actually the data. How would you do that? So you have all these small drawings, this mosaic, and then how do you extract meaning from that in the back end?
Yeah, that's right now manually.
Wow.
And it's pretty much done by looking at it and both whatever was discussed during the exercise that we recorded, and also just trying to interpret things the best that we can. And actually, this is a huge area for the future of Pickles that we're going to dive more into, and just be able to let people perhaps tag their drawings, be able to just in real time analyze and sort things so that we can uncover trends and share that with people. And then also build up this database of all of this qualitative data so that we can start comparing it to other companies. So you can say like, all right, yeah, we do have a happier than average workforce, or our millennials are more just motivated by our corporate mission than other millennials at similar companies, like stuff like that we would get a data scientist for to really start kind of playing with all of this.
Yeah, data scientists and maybe even the psychologist, because I can imagine that there's so much. When I think of children's psychologists who would interpret the drawings of children to see whether they have some trauma or some domestic violence going on, so they have a very good perception of interpreting the meaning of drawings, and then maybe depending on the colors or the shapes, that you can really give an overall meaning to that. Could be very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Like psychologists, group psychology as well. We've talked a little bit about working with kids with Asperger's and people who just don't express themselves verbally quite so well, but with drawing, they can be superb. And so just, yeah, kind of using it as a way to bridge the gap into difficult discussions or just uncovering information that people feel nervous or uncomfortable just kind of speaking. But it's amazing. Like one of my favorite things is to ask people to draw their crest or their personal logo. Like, what would that be? And then it's always like, you can't really interpret that. But when you ask that person to describe why they chose that, the stories that come from that are incredible. And it's like just how they became who they are today. And so it's probably hard to get those kind of origin stories out of people if you didn't have them draw their superhero crest to start with.
I love that. And just one thought related to what you said about how to debrief on that. It would be interesting to see whether there is whether you can distract all the drawings from Pickles onto, let's say, Mural or a Miro board through an API, and then you can really cluster them and have a group exercise on a virtual whiteboard.
Yeah,
it'd be interesting.
Yeah. There's a lot of fun that you can definitely have, and then we can even throw in AI to start trying to figure things out and generate stuff and combine it and make stories out of it. And
use the color codes to create the company logo from all the different drawings. Awesome. And I'm curious, and since you mentioned that you love questions, I'm particularly curious because I can imagine that depending on the invitation that you speak out to a group, you can have very creative, very deep results in terms of drawings, or people can just draw blanks, literally. So how would you define what makes a good prompt for people to really engage in such a drawing activity, and what is a bad prompt?
That's a good question. So I would say that a good prompt changes the headspace that someone is in. If they're just kind of like, one of my favorite ones is to ask people what gives them joy or what are they most grateful for. And just the fact that they are now thinking about all of those things in their life that they're grateful for, and then actually having to draw it out and spend even more time in that state, it can really change someone and just kind of shift what they're thinking about. They're not about their emails or their to-do list anymore. They are in the moment. They are practicing gratitude. They're thinking about joy. And I think that's why a question can be so powerful, because it can lead you places that you weren't going to go on your own. And
love that.
Yeah. I mean, I think like the bad questions are like yes or no questions are okay. Like the questions with few answers, not quite as open-ended. And I mean, the worst questions for sure are some that my girlfriend usually asks me, where I'm like, there's a right and a wrong answer. And the wrong answer means I'm getting in trouble. And the right answer means I get to play again later. So I'm going to answer the right way. Those are trick questions. Those are traps. So those are the worst questions. But yeah, I think anything that you just get people like, I mean, at the first in-person event that we did recently, I asked everyone, what do you want to let go of in your life? What do you want to stop doing? And what do you want to amplify in your life? And that's something that a lot of people just don't think about that often, but it can be super cathartic and productive. And especially when you're doing it in a group, you kind of see all of the different things and you're like, wow, I can relate to so many of these. And it can really kind of open your eyes and create this shared understanding.
Thank you for the examples. And I just wonder whether this would mean prompts that refer to ideas or feelings work better, because then it also allows people who would say, I cannot draw, to actually use shapes and more abstract things to express. Whereas prompts where you ask them about maybe actions or something more complex. So I would think, okay, if the prompt was, what does facilitation, maybe this could actually work. What does facilitation mean to you? But I'm thinking of something that makes it difficult to actually put into an image. And then instead of opening this headspace that you just described, would send every individual into a rabbit hole of, oh my goodness, how can I possibly do that? Because now I need to draw a human being doing something.
Right. Yeah. No, it's totally true. I mean, I do love the question. If you went to the Olympics for anything, what would it be? And then you get people, I mean, they are drawing, walking their cat or shopping or water skiing, playing golf, whatever it may be. And so, yeah, people rise to the occasion surprisingly well. I mean, I'm pretty terrible at drawing, and it's so cool to see people be able to use this platform that I built in ways that I would never, well, I could, but I can't right now draw nearly as well as those people. But yeah, I think it's, and especially you're absolutely right about the feelings, the thoughts, the ideas, the like there's some things that are easier to just put into text, and some things that a couple scribbles can convey so much more than text really could.
Yeah. There's one question I always ask in interviews: what makes a workshop fail? And maybe we can slightly shift it, unless you want to answer it, to what makes such a shared collective drawing exercise fail?
Someone drawing a dick. that it doesn't actually make it fail, but I'll tell you a story. When we were still starting Pickles and we're like, all right, where are we going to be using this platform? We thought, all right, like kids already draw all the time, so let's kind of focus on kids. And that's why the children's hospitals came about. But before we got into children's hospitals, we were doing work with YMCAs and community groups. And so during one of these after school sessions with about 12 to 14-year-olds, there was only about 10 kids in this classroom right outside of Boston at the Roxbury YMCA. And we were drawing Steph Curry, LeBron James, Drake, like doing all of this collaborative drawing, and it was going well. And then I start hearing like a little snicker. They were just kind of like laughing. And I was like, okay, something's kind of up. And then I see one kid, and I see just like a little dick being drawn. And I was like, oh man. And then another kid saw him getting away with it, and he drew an inappropriate word, which was surprisingly graphic for a 12-year-old. And I was like, oh, we don't have the ability of deleting anything yet, because this was still in the early days of the app. And instead of using this as a teaching moment, it turned into an interrogation where the guy at the YMCA who was running it was like, "Who did that?" And everyone was like, obviously not saying it was them. And after trying to do that, no one responding, he was like, all right. And he took everyone's phone one by one and started hitting back to see what they had drawn. And he's like, all right, you're good. And these kids are just terrified. And he was just hitting back, and he found the kid who drew the dick, and he was like, oh, so disappointed, and then had to talk to his dad when his dad came to pick him up, and his dad is just like, oh my God. And so that could have turned into a teaching moment about how, no, we got to all work together. Like, this isn't about trying to pull the attention to yourself, do something like, let's make this good. But it did not end that way. And so I would say that that's one of the workshops that has failed the most in my mind.
Thank you so much for sharing this anecdote, because as you said, there's this one opportunity to turn this into a teaching moment, maybe even a moment of vulnerability. Why is someone drawing that, a 12-year-old? Is it because he just wants to get attention, or is it there may be something else related to it? And I can imagine that even in a different setting, if something comes up that is unexpected, then the ability to use this energy and to turn it into something meaningful, like the example you gave previously with the one person, instead of drawing a superpower, draw him or herself crying and being lonely. So how to use this energy to then create a sense of belonging through this shared experience.
Yeah, I think just being open and kind of accepting it and discussing it is absolutely the way to do it. Yeah, because I'm not about to just get off a stage and start, hey, what did you draw? What you draw this one? It's just like, yeah, you need to flow with things and use it, because it could be a gift. Yeah. If you use it in the right way.
And it also relates to this concept of creating this psychological safety, that, okay, if you expect this to be anonymous, you need to trust that it will remain anonymous, but then also define the rules of the game beforehand. Okay, so what is appropriate, what is inappropriate, what can we do also to others, what can we trigger through our images? Because there's also this group dynamic that can start, right? So I can imagine if everyone draws something very beautiful or creative, and then there's this very dark thing, what does it do to a group? And what is the intention of the individual behind it? So it might be interesting to set the stage beforehand, depending on the group and the maturity.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a huge thing. I don't do enough of it, is just to set objectives and intentions with everybody so they know what they're getting into. I usually just spring it. I'm like, bring out your phones, scan this QR code, you're going to be drawing. And they're like, oh God, what have I walked into? And so, yeah, that's certainly an area I think you're absolutely right about.
Awesome. I just did a question in my mind and it disappeared, but maybe it will come back.
We have a fantastic editor otherwise who can
Thank you, Gordon. Anyway, so where is Pickles then going in the future? What is your vision for it?
That is a great question. And one activity, one thing that I'm pretty excited about right now is setting a Guinness World Record for the world's largest doodle in Canada that we're working on, trying to do not only an activity to get all Canadians drawing and just kind of reflecting on COVID. It's not easy being confined in a cold climate and just kind of suffering through the winters, in addition to not being able to see your neighbors. And so we are building this initiative to kind of in 2022 in January, just get everyone in Canada to just reflect through their drawings. How have they felt? What is keeping them going? What has given them joy? What are they looking forward to? And just kind of have this shared cathartic experience. So I get super excited by the really small activations and the really big activations, because with the big ones, it's awesome being able to capture thousands and thousands of drawings, and you can turn that into all sorts of juicy content and videos and data visualizations. And there's always some artists who just blow me away with what they can do with a platform that we made deliberately primitive so that there are no mistakes or no masterpieces, and everyone's kind of on a caveman tools that they can't excel too much at. But at the same time, those smaller activations that, I mean, there have been people who have cried while using Pickles when they're describing their drawings, and those just still hit me. And just being able to unlock things in people that wouldn't have come out otherwise, and to do what little I can to help people feel better and transform in whatever the way they need to. I always just get really, really, I mean, I love those. And so I think it's like both on the macro and the micro scale that I get really excited about. But I mean, the platform is deliberately primitive. It's simple in nature. Everyone owns their little piece, and then that forms this larger collective piece. And so I would love to do a music festival someday. And while everyone is in the crowd waiting for Blink-182 to come out, they can leave some drawings and in 10 minutes create all of the graphics that will be played behind them during the concert. And yeah, if you're at a baseball game, I personally think baseball is pretty boring, but if they had Pickles that you could draw every inning with everyone else in the stadium, and you could create all of this art, you could have people winning things, and you could just really engage this whole crowd who's there because of the shared experience and the energy in the stadium. Like, I think those are the sort of applications that also get me super fired up.
I love that. And just imagining it, the gift that, for instance, a rock band would receive by when they entered the stage, they see this collective drawing done by their fans as a kind of welcoming gift.
Yeah.
That is super sweet. And okay, two random ideas because I cannot stop it. One is, why limiting it to Canada? And why not comparing different countries and their experiences and learnings from the pandemic? And how would a challenge like the Ice Bucket Challenge, so that you draw something and then you nominate someone else to draw something on a specific topic, and then see how the drawings basically travel through networks and through the world? This could be very interesting.
I Love that idea. Yeah,
And maybe if
I'm
you combine it with
imagining.
a good cause.
Yeah, so
So
that's another thing. Like we've used Pickles for Earth Day, where every tree that was drawn in a 24-hour period, we were planting a real tree. And so we planted 450 trees through that. And I mean, next time I'm definitely going to find a tree sponsor so that it doesn't get out of hand and we need to take out a second mortgage to buy all these trees. But I love those sort of tying these beneficial causes, because then it just incentivizes people even more. And yeah, that would be so cool. I'm even imagining just seeing a world map that you can kind of flick the globe and see everyone's drawings kind of pinned to their locations, and you can see, is Denmark really that happy, or do they just pad the stats somehow? Yeah, I love that. Reason that we're starting in Canada is just because even though I'm in Tahiti right now, I'm usually based in Canada, and it's already kind of undertaking to just engage a country of 23 million people. So 7 billion was maybe that's the 2023 goal. But yeah, I love, you're always thinking big, Miriam. This is so cool.
Yeah, it's fun to dream big with like-minded souls.
Yeah.
Wonderful. If someone in the audience would like to get started with Pickles, what would be the easiest small step for a facilitator, team leader, trainer, coach, whoever sits in the audience to get started?
So the easiest, I would say, would be to go to the website. You can create a free account, and once you get in there, just make a 1 question activity to kick off the next workshop that you might be doing. And yeah, I mean, I like to start activities with kind of like fun, getting to know you, drawing your self-portrait. If you're live with people, I usually ask people to draw the person next to them, just because then they're meeting each other and they're drawing each other, and it makes them even more uncomfortable a lot of times. But yeah, it's fun. So I would probably just say, yeah, just get in there and try and use it, because it's something that I am still not super good at describing, but I'm much more of a visual activity based person, which you'll probably know if you watch this on YouTube and see my hands flailing as I just caught during that. And so, yeah, I mean, I think just doing it, trying it, and having fun with it.
Love it. And even if it's just, as you said, a simple check-in question with draw yourself or draw your internal weather report, which is quite a general check-in question. And then you visualize how the group actually feels emotionally.
Yeah, absolutely. How are you feeling? Just draw a flower. It can be, everyone can draw a flower. And then you just have a little field of flowers populated on the screen to
love it. How do you want to feel after the session? Intention setting. Yeah. Maybe becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Exactly.
Is there anything, because we're approaching almost the hour, is there anything that you would have liked to share that we haven't touched upon yet?
I feel as though your audience, they are all super creative and just facilitators seem to love what they do most of the time. They're not like, oh, my parents forced me to be a facilitator.
If someone
come
in the
from.
audience had this story, please
Yeah,
let me know.
yeah.
Would love
Please
to
tell
hear
us
more.
your long line of facilitators that you came from and why you have to make your father proud by following in that. So I feel like yeah, it's already a pretty creative and engaged audience that you have who love what they're doing. And because I usually would say, like, I mean, anytime that people feel stuck in their job, that creative is a department in their organization that they are not a part of, I always try and push back on that, as like really everyone is creative, and it is a muscle that oftentimes it just starts going weak because we don't use it and we don't know how to use it. I mean, when I was in that corporate sales job, I was just sending the same emails over and over again with slightly different, hey, just wanted to follow up, just needed to circle the wagons, just thought about you and wanted to see if you got back to this report. And I hated myself because I felt like I was stuck in this rut and I didn't know how to get out of it. And I think that just being aware of those ruts, those same things that we might do over and over again, is so important, because it is the first step to trying something new, trying something different, going to a new restaurant, living in a new place. Since I started Pickles in April, now every April rolls around and I try and do new things, different. I'll start brushing my teeth with my left hand, or I change the side of my hair that I part. And it's stupid stuff, but I've just kind of designated this as a month to do new things, because why not? If you're not doing new things, you're not going to like exercise that creativity that we all have. And the more new things that you do, the more that you can exercise it. And so I always just kind of try and impress and inspire people to just pursue their ideas, quit their job, follow their passions, and figure it out along the way, because you're never going to be ready before you start. It's like, I mean, Pickles, I've been working on this for 5 years. And if I knew what it would have taken to get to this point, I may never have started. So that ignorance when you're starting is so important. And it's just like, yeah, I have a gut feeling about this and let's see what happens. And then I wrote that first $1,200 check to a developer. And I was like, well, that's a lot of sunk costs that I have. I got to see this through for the rest of my life, I guess. So that's, that's how you build momentum, I guess.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And yeah, so true. And I love the idea of your business anniversary to use for doing something new. I might copy you on that. Mine is coming up in November.
Ooh. Wait, that's when you do the festival?
Festival, yes. Also, funny enough, last year, so the first time of the festival, by pure coincidence, it fell on my third, I think, business anniversary. So, and I haven't even thought about it initially. So yeah, so there might be something to that.
Yeah, well, you've been then celebrating this bigger than I have. I mean, I'm just changing the side of the hair that I part on, but you're gathering hundreds of people to all do something never been done before. And so, yeah, you are a lot of steps ahead of me.
Well, but these are the small changes that we apply to ourselves that are the most difficult ones, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's true.
And I'm looking forward to co-create the scavenger hunt with you and to integrate Pickles into the festival. And if someone, for a reason I cannot explain, fell asleep after minute 1 of our conversation, just woke up, I'm like, have they been talking about this festival for an hour? What would you like them to remember of our conversation?
We'll have your editor put in some crinkling paper during this while
It's fine. It's always the moment where I realize that nobody actually listens to the podcast until the end, because everyone is surprised by this question.
Yeah. And parting words, or what do I want people to remember? I feel like I don't want to say something cliche, but it's only like cliche things that are coming up. Get in a pickle, because getting out is how you grow.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing your story and sharing so much food for thought and creativity and co-creation. Appreciate that.
Thank you. This was so much fun, Miriam. I appreciate you having me, and I look forward to being at the festival coming up in November, seeing what we can do there. And it was a true pleasure to talk with you it's my Thursday. It's your Friday.
It's my Friday. Thank you. Dum,